Joint U.S. and Egyptian military exercises are expected to resume this month for the first time since 2009. U.S. officials previously cancelled them in 2013 following an Egyptian army crackdown on protests. The joint training is usually held every 2 years but was also cancelled in 2011 after the Arab Spring uprising that year, which resulted in the removal of Egypt's longtime ruler Hosni Mubarak. The announcement on the Bright Star exercises came weeks after U.S. President Donald Trump's administration denied Egypt $95.7 million in aid and allayed $195 million. According to the Egyptian military, the exercises will take place from September the 10th to the 20th at the new Mohamed Najuib military base in West Alexandria. Well, let's now get you more on that story. CGTN's Yasser Hakim joins me live now from our Cairo studios. Yasser, what is the significance of this decision to resume joint U.S. and Egyptian military exercises?
Well, it has two angles to it. First of all, you've got the Egyptian-U.S. relations as a whole, and this shows that there has been a revamp of these relations with the new U.S. President Donald Trump, vis-a-vis obviously Barack Obama, who has been at odds and with a standoff with the current presidency and even the predecessors, Hosni Mubarak. So this shows that the relationship between Egypt and the U.S. is returning to normalcy as before. From the military-wise, you've got obviously an important understanding concerning the fight against terrorism. Egypt has been on a crackdown on terrorism in the region for the past 5 or 6 years. And the Egyptian army, being now ranked 10th on the world and the #1 in Africa and the Arab world, is seen as an important factor in the fight against terrorism in the region. You've seen the war in Yemen, the war in Syria, Iraq, and Libya. They have all these wars have given room for terrorist groups to flourish. And the US with Europe are trying to cooperate with the armies in the region to try to counter the terrorism expansion and extremist expansion in the Middle East. So these will be a step in cooperating together or coordinating efforts military-wise in the fight against extremism and terrorism, and also obviously being it in the Navy have also a Navy taking part in the exercises. There will be also plans to how to counter illegal migration.
And Yasser, to what extent can we say that the strengthening of the relations between these two countries is linked to the closeness between Presidents Trump and Sisi?
Yes, it's very much linked to the personal friendship between Sisi and Trump. Since Trump was in his election campaign, he met Sisi and they had some good words and comments on each other, saying that they expect they will be close later on. Trump had commended Sisi's efforts in the fight against terrorism in the region and has said that they will remain strong allies on this regard. And obviously there has been also an increase in economic cooperation between both countries in the last year or less than a year. So this closeness is related to the two presidents, unlike the former US President Barack Obama, who had distanced himself from whether the current president Abdel Fattah al-Sisi or Hosni Mubarak before him. He was close a bit to the outlawed Muslim Brotherhood leader Mohamed Morsi, but he kind of distanced himself from Sisi. So it is linked to the personal side between the two presidents.
And finally, Yasser, should we expect more military aid to Egypt from the United States at the back of the joint exercise?
Well, this idea of military aid is quite complex in the US because even if the White House would want to give more aid to a country, it has to go through the Congress and other channels as well. And this is where the problem arises, and I believe also the amount, the aid, the $95 million that was cancelled and the $195 million that were sort of put forth for another year, they have gone through the Congress, and it was against the will of the US president, as he said to Sisi in a phone call later on. So having more military aid is a bit sensitive issue that will need the assessment and approval of other factors such as the Congress and the Senate. And at this point, it seems that it is not so clear that they can take this path. So we don't expect more military aid soon. We can expect more purchases of US military or weapons, as Egypt has been doing in the last few years, but not military aid at this moment.
All right, thank you very much for speaking to us on Africa Live. CGTN's Yasser Hakim there talking to us from Cairo in Egypt.